In 1977, a United States Senate hearing room fell silent. A CIA official sat under oath. Across the table were senators, investigators, and cameras. The question was simple. Did the CIA experiment on American citizens without their consent? The answer was no longer classified. It was no longer deniable. It was documented. Years earlier, thousands of MKUltra files had been destroyed, but not all of them. What survived was enough to force the CIA into public testimony. For the first time, a secret Cold War program was being dissected in front of the nation. This was not a rumor, not a conspiracy, not speculation. It was a Senate hearing, and what happened in that room would permanently alter public trust in American intelligence. The program was called MKUltra, and this was the moment it could no longer remain hidden. By the mid-1970s, the United States was experiencing a crisis of confidence. The Vietnam War had eroded public trust. The Pentagon Papers revealed systematic deception. Watergate exposed abuse at the highest level of executive power. For decades, intelligence agencies had operated with minimal oversight. That era was ending. In 1975, the U.S. Senate established what became known as the Church Committee. Its purpose was broad: investigate intelligence abuses, examine covert operations, restore constitutional balance. For the first time in modern history, Congress began examining the internal practices of agencies like the CIA and FBI. Subpoenas were issued, files were requested, testimonies were scheduled, and in the process of reviewing intelligence activity, investigators encountered references to something unfamiliar: MKUltra. At first, documentation was limited. The CIA reported that most of the files had already been destroyed in 1973, but financial records survived. Those records led investigators to universities, hospitals, and research institutions. Patterns began to emerge: funding transfers, sub-projects, behavioral research, drug testing. The scale was larger than expected. This was not a single road experiment. It was structured, authorized, funded, and now it required explanation. The Senate scheduled formal hearings. CIA officials would testify under oath. The secrecy that had protected MKUltra for over 2 decades was weakening. And once testimony begins under oath, the margin for denial narrows. In 1977, hearings specifically addressing MKUltra took place. CIA officials confirmed that the program had existed. They confirmed that research into behavioral modification had been conducted. They confirmed that LSD and other substances had been tested. And under questioning, they acknowledged something more serious. In certain cases, individuals had been administered psychoactive substances without informed consent. Some subjects were prisoners, some were patients, some were ordinary citizens. The stated objective of MKUltra had been national security: understand psychological influence before adversaries could weaponize it. But the hearings forced a distinction. National security does not eliminate legal boundaries. Under questioning, the destruction of files in 1973 became central. Why were the records destroyed just before oversight intensified? The official explanation was administrative closure, but senators pressed further. Was the destruction intended to limit accountability? Officials stated that no formal continuation of MKUltra existed after its termination. Yet investigators struggled with incomplete records. Thousands of documents were gone. Witnesses referenced sub-projects that could no longer be fully reconstructed. The hearing transcripts reflected attention, not explosive, not theatrical, but restrained, institutional, measured. This was not a dramatic confession, it was controlled admission, and that distinction mattered, because in intelligence oversight, what is acknowledged shapes what can be pursued. The American public learned about MKUltra not through leaked speculation, but through official hearings. News coverage expanded. The idea that a government agency had funded behavioral experiments on unwitting subjects unsettled the country. Even within the Cold War context, the ethical boundaries appeared blurred. The hearings did not provide a complete picture. They provided confirmation. Confirmation that the program existed, research occurred, consent was sometimes absent, and records were destroyed. But ambiguity remained. How many individuals were affected? How extensive were the sub-projects? What were the long-term consequences? Without complete documentation, precise answers were impossible. The hearings exposed MKUltra, but they did not fully explain it. This partial clarity created a paradox. Transparency had begun, yet full understanding was unreachable. For intelligence agencies, this outcome was significant. The program was acknowledged, the institution remained intact. Reforms were proposed, oversight structures strengthened, but no comprehensive legal reckoning followed, and no complete archive could be reconstructed. The Senate hearings did more than expose MKUltra. They redefined oversight. The Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act followed in 1978. Permanent intelligence committees were established in Congress. Formal review mechanisms expanded. The era of unchecked covert experimentation narrowed. But the hearings also revealed the limits of accountability. Without full records, investigations stall. Without full reconstruction, liability becomes abstract. Officials testified, policies were revised, but historical clarity remained incomplete. MKUltra became an acknowledged chapter of Cold War intelligence. It did not become a fully documented one. This distinction is subtle, yet powerful. In democratic systems, exposure is a form of correction, but exposure without complete evidence rarely produces complete consequence. The hearings demonstrated that intelligence agencies could be questioned. They also demonstrated that institutional protection mechanisms were resilient. File destruction had limited the scope of inquiry. What remained was enough to confirm misconduct, not enough to map it entirely. And in that space between confirmation and comprehension, ambiguity persisted. The Senate hearings exposed MKUltra. They confirmed its existence. They documented its structure. They acknowledged its ethical violations. But they did not reconstruct its entirety. Thousands of documents were already gone. Testimony filled gaps. It did not replace evidence. In intelligence work, secrecy protects operations, but in moments of exposure, destruction protects institutions. The hearings represented a turning point. Oversight strengthened. Public awareness expanded. Yet the complete story of MKUltra may never be fully known, not because it remains classified, but because much of it no longer exists. What survives are fragments, transcripts, financial records, admissions under oath. The rest exists only as absence, and absence limits judgment. The Senate hearings forced acknowledgement. They did not restore the archive, and that may be the most enduring consequence.